The story of its destruction is renowned the world over. A town buried by a volcanic eruption.
The horror of an August day in 79 AD.
This is the city of Hercules, Herculaneum.
Have you ever walked through ruins and felt like someone was watching? Like the walls, the stones, even the dust still remember something? In Herculaneum, they do. This isn't just a lost city. It's a moment, trapped forever, waiting for someone to finally listen. Let's uncover what the silence left behind. Just a few miles from Pompeii, along the Bay of Naples, once stood a thriving Roman town, Herculaneum, smaller than Pompeii, but wealthier, calmer, more refined. Villas with marble columns, libraries filled with ancient scrolls, and bathhouses carved deep into stone. For centuries, it lay forgotten until it was unearthed. More perfectly preserved than anyone imagined, in 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted. Pompeii was buried under ash, but that's only part of the story. But Herculaneum? It faced something far worse, a blast of fire and toxic gas. So fast and hot, it vaporized people in seconds. At first, archaeologists found no bodies, only buildings. They believed the town had been evacuated. But decades later, they uncovered the truth. Over 300 skeletons, packed into boathouses by the shore. Families, soldiers, children, all waiting for a rescue that never came. Their remains were frozen, in raw, final moments, arms shielding faces, hands clinging to one another. Unlike Pompeii, which preserved people mid-death, Herculaneum preserved life. Wooden beds, furniture, food in pots, two-story homes, even scrolls from the Villa of the Papyri, still being decoded today. Herculaneum whispers louder than Pompeii, not with tragedy, but with detail, with memory. Not a city that just died, but one that lived, right until the last breath. To the people of Herculaneum, it began like any other day. Markets opened, fishermen set out to sea. The mountains stood quiet. For now, by midday, Mount Vesuvius exploded. A towering column of ash soared into the sky, visible for miles. Pompeii began to fall under darkness and ash. But in Herculaneum, the wind kept the sky clear. For now, by evening, the sea began to recede. The air thickened. Something was coming. People rushed toward the harbor, huddling in stone boathouses, hoping ships would arrive. Then, at around 9:30 p.m., it struck. A pyroclastic surge, a wall of fire, gas and rock, descended at over 100 kilometers per hour. It hit with no warning. Death was instant. No screams, no escape, just silence. Herculaneum was sealed beneath 20 meters of volcanic debris. A city erased, yet preserved. But from the scrolls in its libraries, the bones by the sea, and the homes left intact, we rebuilt their final day, piece by piece, a normal morning, an eerie evening, and by night, nothing but whispers beneath the ash. For decades, archaeologists believed the people of Herculaneum had escaped. Unlike Pompeii, no human remains were found, just streets, homes, and silence. But in the 1980s, that silence was shattered. Excavations near the ancient shoreline revealed something chilling. Rows of skeletons huddled inside stone boathouses, just meters from the sea, over 300 bodies, men, women, children, all gathered in one final, desperate moment. These weren't people hiding in their homes. They had fled, gathered by the shore, clinging to hope that the ships would come. Some held jewelry, some had bags of coins, others carried tools or food, the few things they thought they'd need. To start over. They didn't expect to die here. They were waiting to live, but help never came. At around 9:30 p.m., the first pyroclastic surge reached the coast. 500 degrees Celsius of fire, ash, and gas, moving faster than they could run. Death was instant. Bones shattered, skulls cracked from the heat, but their positions, their belongings, their final postures remained. It was as if time had paused, freezing raw human emotion in stone. CT scans and forensic studies revealed heartbreaking details. Mothers holding children, a man shielding a loved one, young adults curled against the walls, bones scarred by intense heat, some bodies literally vaporized. Yet despite the violence of death, the site remains quiet, solemn, a graveyard no one ever intended to build. One skeleton wore a gold bracelet, engraved with the words, "From someone who loves you." Another had a belt with tools, likely a craftsman, who thought he might rebuild his life somewhere else. Some had keys in their hands. They locked their homes, expecting to return. The most haunting part, these weren't faceless victims. They were families, with names we'll never know, but stories we can still feel. Today, the boathouses remain. You can still walk through them, see the spaces where lives ended, together. And if you listen closely, not with your ears, but with your imagination, you might hear the sounds of that final night. Waves, lapping, children, crying, people whispering, prayers to gods who stayed silent. This isn't just an archaeological site, it's a memorial. And those 300 souls still whisper their truth from the place where they hoped to be saved. The villas that time forgot, Herculaneum's frozen grandeur. Not all of Herculaneum was destroyed in chaos, some of it simply froze. Behind its crumbling walls lie villas so intact. It feels like their owners just stepped out for a moment, and none are more iconic than the villa of the Pompeii, thought to belong to Julius Caesar's father-in-law. This villa sat on a cliffside, luxurious, massive, and built for beauty. Marble columns, sunlit courtyards, and a private library filled with nearly 2,000 scrolls. It wasn't just a home, it was a statement of power, taste, and intellect. When the eruption came, it didn't reduce this place to ash. It sealed it perfectly. Step inside, and you'll still see vivid frescoes on the walls, painted gods, mythological scenes, deep red, gold, and black palettes. The floors, covered in breathtaking mosaics. Thousands of stones form birds, vines, and abstract patterns. Every corner whispered the same truth. This owner mattered. The scrolls were burned, but not lost, turned to carbon by the heat, unreadable for centuries. But now, modern tech is peeling them open, digitally. We're uncovering lost works of philosophy, science, and ethics, possibly even writings by major thinkers, and there may be thousands more, still buried in untouched rooms. It's quiet here, no footsteps, no voices, just beauty and stillness. This is what makes Herculaneum feel so different. Wealth, perfectly preserved, but utterly lifeless. No chaos, just the echo of what once was. The homes still stand, but their owners never returned. The villas of Herculaneum tell a quieter story, not of destruction, but of suspended elegance. Their art, their scrolls, their silence, all whisper of a civilization that once thrived, then vanished overnight. But thanks to the ash, their world never truly disappeared. It's still here, waiting for us to listen. The whispers from the villas are soft, but unforgettable. What Herculaneum preserved that Pompeii didn't. Pompeii gets the headlines, but when it comes to preservation, Herculaneum quietly wins. Both cities were destroyed by Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, but the way they died? That made all the difference. Pompeii was buried under falling ash and pumice slowly. Herculaneum was hit by a superheated pyroclastic surge, faster, hotter, deadlier. And strangely, that heat preserved things Pompeii never could. In Herculaneum, archaeologists found wooden furniture, beds, shelves, shutters, even doors. Food, loaves of bread, fruit, even olives in jars. Textiles, delicate fabric patterns, still visible. Human remains, skulls, teeth, bones, intact enough for forensic study. And the rarest of all, carbonized papyrus scrolls, still holding their words. It's the closest thing we have to a Roman time capsule, intact, down to the second floor of houses, where Pompeii gives us frozen chaos. Herculaneum gives us human detail, a life paused mid-action, not just in shape but in texture. Library of Fire, the burnt scrolls still whispering, hidden inside the villa of the papyri, is something no other Roman site has ever given us. A complete private library, over 1,800 scrolls, carbonized yet still intact. These aren't just any scrolls, they're handwritten works of ancient philosophy, science, and ethics, possibly even texts we've never seen before. The scrolls were turned to black charcoal by the heat. For years, they were too fragile to touch. But now, thanks to CT scans and AI, we're digitally unrolling them, layer by layer. The project, called the Vesuvius Challenge, is decoding characters without ever opening the scrolls physically. What have we found so far? Works by Philodemus, a philosopher of Epicurean thought, insights into Roman intellectual life, and possibly more, still hidden in unopened rooms. It's slow, painstaking, but every new word brings us closer to the mind of a world thought lost. This is the only place in history where fire preserved a library. And now, 2,000 years later, the scrolls are whispering back. Whispers of the children, lives lost too young. Among the 300 victims found in Herculaneum's boathouses, there were many children. Some were cradled in their mother's arms. Others lay curled beside adults, close and quiet, unaware of what was coming. They weren't hidden away in homes. They were brought to the shore because their parents thought it was safer, because they believed rescue would arrive. One child was found holding a small bag of coins. Another wore jewelry, likely placed around their neck, in panic, or love, or both. Some wore shoes, far too small to belong to anyone else. Tiny soles, barely worn, never meant to walk through ash. These weren't just bones. They were echoes of innocence, lost in the chaos of nature. And yet, even in that destruction, traces of their lives remain. In other parts of the city, archaeologists uncovered tiny footprints preserved in hardened volcanic mud, clay toys, rattles, and figurines left behind in corners. A crib, still partly intact, its wooden frame scorched but unmistakable. No one wrote down their names, no plaques, no gravestones, just fragments of small lives, frozen in place. There were no farewell letters, no last words, only silence and objects that spoke louder than anything ever written. In a city famous for villas and scrolls, the children left no monuments, no libraries, no frescoes. They left behind something quieter and somehow heavier, a heartbreak preserved in silence. And in that silence, they still whisper, not for attention, but for remembrance. The forgotten eruption. Why no one talks about Herculaneum when people hear Vesuvius? They think Pompeii, the casts, the chaos, the tourists. But why is Herculaneum barely known? Maybe because it was harder to reach, harder to excavate. Maybe because it didn't offer the dramatic plaster bodies that made Pompeii famous. Or maybe because its story is quieter. Pompeii is a headline, Herculaneum is a footnote, but one filled with more preservation, more secrets, more depth. It took decades to uncover its boathouse victims. Many of its scrolls remain unread, and some parts of the city, they are still buried today. But slowly, Herculaneum is reclaiming its voice, not through spectacle, but through science, through silence, through the details that Pompeii couldn't hold. This isn't just the forgotten eruption, it's the most preserved moment of ancient life we've ever seen. And now, finally, the world is starting to listen. The ashes of Herculaneum buried more than just buildings. They sealed memories, emotions, and entire lives, waiting to be uncovered piece by piece. These were not just ruins. They were homes, voices, and dreams, paused, not lost.